Fire high explosives. Send it. Oh, hi, Mike. I don't have a Panzer.
One time I could actually impersonate Frollo, and you play with your tank.
It's not a tank. It's a Panzer IV.
Either way, it is witchcraft.
Hi, Mike. How's it going?
Well, besides a little touch up post nasal drip, I'm fine. And let me just say, welcome one and all on YouTube and in podcast land. You are listening to the Tangent Kings. Roll it. Welcome once again to the Tangent Kings podcast. I am, of course, your humble servant, G. Michael Francis, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Mr. Benks. How you doing today, sir?
I'm actually having a really good night, Mike. Thanks for asking.
Well, that's good because I am having a rough one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dude.
No, it's okay. It's like I mentioned in the opening. It's a fun little case of post-nasal drip. Which, if you're not familiar with that, one, if you're in the middle of a meal, I highly suggest you take a pause now or skip over it, what I'm about to say.
You could just probably leave it at that. Just say, hey, it's not fun, and we'll probably spare them our...
Yeah, that's probably a good point, just in case someone's
details.
eating. I mean, it's not that bad, but...
Yeah, well, we can, yeah.
It's essentially a runny nose going the other way.
That's a good description. So, but, yeah, so that's fine. But yeah, no, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that, Mike.
That's life, and of course, it's allergy season for me, so this is going to be fun.
Right.
Of course, I do get a little testy when I feel like this, but hey, that's the way life goes sometimes. Sometimes you get a brick, and sometimes that brick hits an Irishman and a Pole mixed into one person. Hey, I'm still cracking the jokes, though, and I told one to you, which I am not going to share on this show right now. Because
we're okay with that. Yeah, so let's keep the audience in suspense. And Mike's just watching, like, I want to hear the joke. And
of course,
like,
you
do.
No,
you'll not hear the joke.
Well, maybe a select few of you will know where to find it once I'm done here. But good.
Dude, this Panzertank actually has like the loading breech for the freaking shells to go. It doesn't actually shoot, but it actually shoots. It actually has all this detail in it. This is so freaking awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I was worried if that was something banned by the National Firearms Act of 1997.
Speaking of fire, unrelated to the tank though, did you hear that Biden is actually moving forward with banning the so-called ghost guns thing right now?
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, about a month ago, they were kind of threatening it. I'm saying they're going to do this, and I'm happy that I prepared and I bought took adequate action on that. So I'm like, hey, I'm okay now, but
yeah, well,
sounds like they're got imminent action.
Well,
they're going to take on those.
This is the administration that was promising 1 million jobs in the first 100 days and only produced, what was it, 250,000?
You know, it's kind of funny how it's just. Do you, Mike? Do you find it interesting that it's? I don't know. I don't want to say a certain demographic of people, but just like certain people are like they have this starry-eyed look, and I was like, oh, if I promised it, and the government will do it, it'll happen. And now they're just like, oh my gosh, how dare them lie? And it's like, what do you expect?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I had to mute my mic there for a second.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, like I said, post-nasal drip, it's fun.
Yeah.
So you might hear me sniffle in the middle of the podcast. Don't worry, I do not have the Wuhan flu.
Yeah, the bat.
We don't know yet.
That bat sushi getting to you, Mike.
Well, I'm just waiting for when I do test positive on that.
When? Oh my goodness.
I'm not even bothering with the vaccine with what they're saying at this point.
We go from talking about Lego Panzer tanks to firearms getting banned and surprised Biden's a terrible president, surprising nobody.
Well, duh. Oh, yeah, and speaking of gas shortage.
Oh my goodness.
Wait, have you been seeing that? I've been seeing all over Facebook.
I've been following the news. They said that in air quotes that it was some. I think they said like first they said it was some shadowy hacker group, and then the government said it's Russians that did it. And it's like the Russians are your excuse for everything, man. All the successes of Obama, all Trump's successes, right? That was Obama, and all of Biden's failures and all his mistakes. Oh, it's not his fault. It's the Russians, or the economists just don't understand how good of a president Biden is. It's like,
or it's Trump.
Everything's Trump's fault, and everything successful is. I'll take all the successes, but all my failures are not my fault. That's not a leader.
What a way to run the country,
right? And surprising no one. Except maybe some
my
people.
dots are going ballistic. Hold on.
They're fine. So yeah, no, I was going to say about this little Panzer tank. This is not. It looks like it's built out of Lego bricks. It's actually not. It's ABS plastic. Same material Lego bricks are made out of, except they are made by a third-party company. The company that I highly recommend you go to their website. It's called buildarmy.com. That's buildarmy.com, all one word. And I'll share my screen very, very briefly here just so people can kind of take a quick peek at that. But they've got a selection, and I'm not sponsored by them. I just love their website. They've got a ton of World War II tanks for a pretty good price. You get sent to you either in a plastic bag or a box. And they've got stuff, anything from assault guns to heavy Tiger tanks. They got minifigures from another website. They've got artillery pieces. They even have some planes right now too. So it's for World War II enthusiasts like me. Give it a shot. They've recently just put up a Messerschmitt 262, which actually doesn't look too bad.
One of the most overrated fighters of the 20th century.
All right, your British nationalism is showing, Mike.
Hey, now.
The Spitfire was really good, but
I mean, yeah, the Spitfire was really good, but I never said I was British.
Well, they're fighting
the closest thing I've got is Irish, dude.
That's basically British. I'm gonna get crucified for that.
Oh yes, you are. I will personally come up there and crucify you for that.
My ancestors are rolling in their graves. No, I do not stand by that comment.
Well, then again, it was your turn to make a stupid off the cuff.
Oh, come on. It wasn't that. Well, no, it was. I'll take ownership of that. It's like basically.
Well, I had to match the one I made last week.
Did I roast you for that one last week?
Yes, you did.
Okay, then it's my turn.
Don't worry, I'm not particularly good at roasting.
That's okay. But we'll roll with it anyways. But anyway, so yeah, Legos are really cool if you want to get one of those. I did not actually get a chance to screen share, so just look at it when you get a chance on your own. But anyway, needless to say, Lego tanks aside, we had an article we were going to look at. We were sent in by one of our viewers that we were going to talk about.
Absolutely.
Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, another man, one of our avid viewers, his name is also Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mike Wazowski.
Oh, shut up. Yeah, pardon me if I'm going through puberty at the same time. Post nasal drip.
It's a metal band, bro.
Oh dear God.
Hi, we're post nasal drip. We're here to rip. But anyway, so we read this article.
Yes, and it is by a one Miss Anna Keating with the Hedgehog Review, which is an interesting name for a publication. I did briefly look at their front page, and this is definitely not a conservative publication by any stretch of the imagination.
And what did this article say on this publication, Mr. Mike?
Well, the title of this article is "The Problem with Western Religions on Campus, the Strange Politics of Administrative Anti-Racism." Now, on the surface, this sounds like something absolutely trashing religion on college campuses. But when I actually read the article, it's actually the other way around. This is a critique of
Neo-Marxist intersectionality and neo-Marxism.
Anti-racism.
Oh, right, yeah, which has been ripped to high hell, but people still believe in it anyways.
I mean, there are many things people believe that have been ripped to high hell that people still believe. Flat Earth.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, flat Earth is a meme. I was thinking more of astrology is more of a relevant
or Wicca being the world's most ancient religion that got ripped up and down, and
yeah.
people still believe it.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of funny how when it supports. I mean, what was I think Aldous Huxley had said that he said something to the effect that lies are comforting beliefs or comforting lies float around people like flies hover above garbage cans. So that's
Indeed.
something like that. Um, Not putting people down for believing different things, but just like people selectively filter out information. Oh, that information makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to hear it. So I think people have to be open to hearing different information in the first place. But anyway, so the article's talking about how anti-racism has taken over campuses and it's
And
poisoned
it's
the
not
air.
a pretty picture.
Hmm.
Here, let me turn on my screen sharing real quick. All right, so you can see here. This is the article in question.
It's an air Western is in air quotes.
Yep. And in the first, I'm not gonna narrate the whole thing. One, because with whatever is going on with me, it's a little hard for me to focus.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just, the first paragraph is essentially her, just laying down her foundations. Why she knows or how. Well, it lends credibility.
Well, because the author author her name is Anna Keating, like you said, she's a chaplain at which university did we say it was?
It doesn't say the university.
Okay,
I
because
seriously doubt it's this one that says Berry College Chapel.
yeah,
I seriously doubt that's it. But
yeah, she's written on Salon before, which is more of a mainstream news outlet. But she was basically talking about her experience as being a chaplain. She's Catholic, with a feminist, very liberal, a chaplain.
which says
That's
somewhere in here.
interesting. Um, and she talked about how people finding their identities pretty much was kind of a cornerstone of her
Yep,
philosophical
here it is.
underpinnings. Discuss
Yep,
different
she
ideas
says.
and figure out your identity, especially from a religious and um, people figuring out their identities and discussing different ideas kind of thing is what she's saying.
Yep.
And then she
And
found out that campuses were becoming not only antagonistic and what's the phrase? She mentioned that people shifted from being open-minded to talking about different ideas to everything is white supremacy.
Indeed, and just to kind of backtrack a little bit, in this paragraph, she mentions the chaplaincy program, which is headed by two ordained Protestant ministers, but these ones tend to focus on Eastern and New Age style offerings. Yes, I am sort of reading as I'm explaining.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that caught my attention and actually drew a little concern for me was, among other things, you got I don't know how to say this.
Qigong.
Qigong, which it's a little weird that a Christian would be getting into something like this. But what really drew my concern was the fact that they have tarot card nights in the chapel.
Mm-hmm. Because that doesn't seem like it's a particularly Catholic belief system, is it?
Well, not remotely Christian. As a matter of fact, the Catholic Church classifies that as a type of witchcraft.
And so she was saying that what she was taught, which that's like oil and water, because she's saying that the two heads of the chaplaincy program were both ordained Protestant ministers, but they tended to focus on not only these New Age and Eastern offerings, they're also basically it almost sounds like they're Protestant in name only, or they're very there's some kind of concerns about their beliefs because they're practicing things that they're
well, she's not so much concerned about it. She's just explaining what kind of chaplaincy this was.
Well, what I mean is that those particular ministers don't sound like they're people that follow their doctrine very adhere to their religious doctrines very deeply, because there's some clashing of those beliefs of Eastern and New Age beliefs versus Protestant theological framework.
Right. But my point being that with tarot cards, and I was just watching, some talks by this great uh, I'm just going to use this term for lack of better term, a demonologist
Okay.
by the name of Adam Bly,
Mm-hmm.
Blai, and he's talking about exorcisms and things that the devil and his fallen angels will use in order to possess somebody, and among them, tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
Because and he also talks about how ultimately it is a violation of the first commandment. I am the Lord your God; you shall have no other gods before me.
Mm-hmm.
And that by giving your consent to these spirits, it goes a little farther than some people realize. Some people think it's just a game.
Well, it's kind of funny how there's a couple different perspectives on it. There's the materialist or the naturalist perspective where it's the only thing there is no spirituality in the world or the universe, that it's just material things, that is all that's there. So the cards have no power because powers like spiritual powers like that don't exist. That's one perspective on them. So people think, oh, it's funny, or they think that there's nothing more meaningful to this than that. Other people, another perspective might be that the cards have some kind of do have a supernatural meaning to it, and that it's benign. It's neither good nor evil, depending on what kind of spirits you court, pretty much. Another view is that they actually might have some kind of indicator of telling your future or telling you something that you need to know about yourself, like this vague umbrella of spiritualism. There's something out there trying to communicate to you and try to, communicate something positive or truthful or factual about your life. And then there's more of the traditional Christian view, where it's a gateway to
Possession.
yes, and there's also the perspective um, that it's a when you're dealing with from a Christian worldview, the kingdom of darkness, that um, you're being acclimated to deeper things. So there's a lot of different perspectives
Mm-hmm.
on tarot cards, but also
Yeah, because the devil at first will appear innocent. As a matter of fact, Adam Bly. He talks about women who get possessed, and at first, how the devil appears
how does he appear?
as a sick little girl looking for a mommy.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's one of the most common denominators in possession in women, because he's acting on their maternal instinct,
Mm-hmm.
and then oh, you poor little thing, let me invite you in, we'll have conversations, and you start rule of thumb, if a spirit comes in and he wants to play 20 questions, he's not of God.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting how um, certainly as far as pop culture is concerned, is that there's this attitude of either there are no spirits out there, or either there are no spirits out there, or the spirits are just um, it's this sort of vague force of in the universe, or they think, oh, if there are demonic spirits out there, let's invite them in and
Mm-hmm.
let's play games with them because it's funny and there will be no
and
consequences to it.
and people think they're in control. No, the demon is only pretending to be in your control,
Mm-hmm.
because the second you get in so deep that you can't get on your own, 9 times out of 10 they turn on you like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a common occurrence where you'll have a lady or a man or a lady who is deeply engaged in Satanism, and when they're nearing their death, the devil says, I've had I've had my fun with you. Now I'm going to torment you until you die.
It's interesting you mentioned that too. There's an author by the name of John Ramirez. He was a former Satanist, and he mentioned how after he had renounced, in his words, he was a general in the devil's camp. He was actually involved in the practice of astral projecting and putting hexes and curses and doing blood sacrifices and rituals to hex people. Um, in fact, in his words, he said that he had a demonic wedding, where demons had physically manifested as guests in his wedding, and the devil's presence was actually there at his wedding when he got married, among many other things that he did. And he mentioned that after he turned away from Satanism, from worshiping the devil, he had mentioned that his eyesight was taken from him, that he was blind for over a year. Like medically, they said there was nothing wrong with him, but he was physically blind, among a bunch of other things that happened to him after he left.
Yeah.
But they turn on you fast.
Oh yes, yeah.
Fast.
As soon as you're no longer useful.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that this is topics for another video. And
Mm-hmm.
although one quick anecdote, and this comes from a pamphlet produced by Rome. It's called "Begone Satan." It came out in like the 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the private version. This is not the one you can just order online in paperback.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this priest doing a solemn exorcism,
Mm-hmm.
and he was dealing with the Prince of Darkness himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the priest looks at him and he says, look, our Lord is merciful. You're suffering. We're all tired. You're suffering. I'm suffering. She's suffering. Why don't you just ask God to forgive you? And in quotes, the devil said back to him in a calm voice, "Are you a competent theologian?" Because the devil can't repent. He won't repent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when he made his choice, he saw it to the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the Spark Notes version. I understand I am rambling a little bit.
Why don't you pull up that link sometime, and we should talk about it next episode.
Absolutely.
Because I'm kind of interested in how that is, like, more the details of that theologian and this.
He's not a theologian if you're talking about Adam Bly.
Was it Adam Bly who had this conversation, you said?
No, this is I think he's actually unnamed in the book.
Interesting. Well, yeah, we should. I'm kind of curious about the context of the whole the passage in the book.
Yeah. Well, the pamphlet is called "Begone Satan," and I think you can find it on EWTN's website.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that in more detail next time. But that's interesting, though. Well, because I mean, I guess one of the things that I wanted to kind of put out there, because we're kind of obviously going on a tangent here, a little bit away from the article, but what I kind of find interesting is that there's this attitude that people can play, people can experiment with not only just certain lifestyles in general, like doing a bunch, like there's this juvenile attitude where people, and I think they do it out of boredom to some degree,
or
they're looking for meaning.
It's why teens rebel, is because they feel like they have no sense of control.
That's very, very fair. Actually, that's a deep thought. Because if people are hungry for a kind of spirituality that doesn't involve their parents' religion, because if their parents were hyper controlling, they want a connection to the supernatural that doesn't involve anything to do with their parents. That's an interesting thought.
And they usually come crying back to Holy Mother Church in the end anyway.
But it's kind of interesting how people, there's this, and I kind of notice this trend in culture, just as far as pop culture is concerned. You can do anything you want, any way you want, and people say as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. But they say it doesn't even matter if you hurt somebody else. It doesn't matter if you.
Yeah, that was Aleister Crowley's rule, who is the father of modern Satanism. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's mostly like it's becoming more of an attitude of do what the hell you want to do. Who's going to stop you, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Just push, break and destroy and smash things. It's almost like it's almost reminiscent of that. What's the island from Pinocchio? Pleasure Island.
Yeah, Pleasure Island.
Do anything you want that's self-destructive to yourself or anybody else in your life. At zero consequences. And you're like, oh, that sounds great. And it's like, oh, now comes time to pay the bill, because there are consequences to doing things that are self-destructive or destructive to other people. It's just the consequences aren't immediately there sometimes.
Absolutely. But yeah, like we said, that's a topic for another video, and I would like to get back
Right.
to this article.
Right. But anyway, needless to say, yeah, it's definitely a different way of looking at a very different frame of reference for a minister and a chaplain.
Yep, especially a Catholic one.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that in criticism. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
generally. Anyway, I, my mind is going in all sorts of direction, folks.
Yeah, well,
But
we just came back from a big tangent anyway, so, but
yeah, but she does go on. You know how people from other religions or even no religion at all would, you know, as it says here, they'd have a communal meal and
mm-hmm.
they'd pray something called the Divina, which is, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit ignorant of this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll circle back to that later.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably leave it in the comments
Okay,
or in
Packy.
the description once I look it up.
Mm-hmm.
But it suffices to say, it is a very Catholic practice.
Okay.
She talks about how this spiritual needs to be integrated, and as long as it's generally welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
But now this is where it gets interesting.
Because she mentions there's a quick line there, just kind of scroll up just one notch, is that this is the only place on camp. Someone said they had a diversity of perspectives and viewpoints in the area she'd work. And she said at one student who came to the supper, she said, this is the only place on campus where I have conversations with people who think differently than me.
Which is very rare on college campuses nowadays.
Yeah, because they pretend that you can't, that's what the college is for, but you can't, but that's not the case in practice.
Yep. And which is coming up here in a minute, and she talks about how, you have Catholic students meeting for mass. It's generally seen as weird, but not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And now she bemoans uh, the new liberalism. No, she says here in her article, but liberalism's commitment to that kind of pluralism has been eroded by what the writer Wesley Yang calls the successor ideology, which I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but essentially means, it's uh, if it's something that's viewed as stereotypically white, that it's considered a structure of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where it starts to become problematic. Because you can see where that's sort of going. Because now, in this paragraph, she's talking about a spiritual but not religious student, who supports Planned Parenthood. Though she's saying that she doesn't, she's afraid to come to these meetings anymore because, just because of this ostracization.
Mm-hmm.
Ostracization. Wow.
Yeah. She
whatever the word is.
Yeah,
I don't care.
She's going to be outed because she's one of them, in air quotes. She doesn't believe she's not part of the effectively the cult. So
Exactly.
you're not one of us, so kick her out, make her an outcast.
So what the bottom line sort of is coming to is, in his book How to Be Anti-Racist, which is starting to become the Bible on college campuses.
Yeah, the intersectionalist Bible.
Exactly. It's about leveling group differences, which essentially that means, if you have a group for Catholics but not a group for Muslims, either you need to get a group for all these groups or do away with them entirely.
Which is interesting because the author also brings up that you could have 60 Jewish students on the campus and have a Jewish club, and there may not happen to be any, in terms of demographics, any Muslims on the club. So you say, well, unless you have a Muslim student organization or a Muslim religious club, even though there are no Muslims on campus, you can't have a Jewish club. So unless, do you remember the fairness doctrine from many years ago, Mike?
Oh, God, no.
So what it used to be many years ago was that you couldn't have a discussion on cable news, for example, unless you portray the other side. So you
Oh
can't
yeah.
talk about a pro perspective. You have to literally have the other person on the other side, otherwise you don't have anything at all. So you basically, this is kind of a soft censorship. Like, you can't celebrate your beliefs unless there's another club. Well, if there's no other club, then you just erases your uh, club altogether, which is, I think, is the intent.
Absolutely. And I think, moreover, and she does come to this point in the article at some point. I can't remember where, but uh, but I read it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll provide the link to the article in the description.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, where no, there's this fear where it might not just boil down to clubs, but actual student representation.
Yeah.
Like, it's entirely possible that, oh, you're a Catholic. Well, Catholics are already overrepresented, so you can't come in.
What, which is just, that's so interesting because it always starts out like that. Like, there's this, it's sort of like what you were saying a little while ago. It's like the hurt little girl at the door. It's like, all I really want is just representation. So we're like, well, sure, that sounds like a completely reasonable request. And you take it at face value. Okay, so you change either the whatever media piece you have, be it a story or a movie or an actual club, whatever it is, say, okay, I have more representation. And then you say, okay, that's great. But then the second request comes, okay, now that I have representation, well, I want more representation. I want more of whatever X group or X people identity in my piece of media or my organization. You're like, okay, that sounds reasonable. And then that percentage grows, and then it's like, okay, well, we still don't have enough. And then they start saying, okay, well, now that we have a sizable minority, then it starts to flip, or majority. Then it's like, okay, you know what? Actually, the fact that people of Y group, even though that the people of Y group were the original formers of whatever club or organization or community or media, even though that they were the original part of it, it's evil now that they're here, so we need to remove them. So they go from building up a majority to then we're going to purge them out, kind of thing.
Exactly.
And people are stupid enough to think they just take them at face value. Like, well, of course, who wouldn't want representation? But then what they don't mean, what
I
they don't mean
believe in
what they say.
representation based on merit.
Yeah. But then they skirt that argument, just say, well,
Mm-hmm.
you're just racist. Oh, I'm going to put a label on you. You're a bigot. You're evil. And they just attack you
Mm-hmm.
until you stop talking because you're a threat to them.
Oh boy. But oh yeah, here's the line I was sort of
Looking for.
looking for. It's yeah, by Ibram X Kendi, who wrote the this doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
No, if he says, and I quote, if discrimination is creating equality, then it is anti-racist. So in other words, now it's okay to discriminate Catholics because they're from a system of white supremacy. Despite the fact that some of the best Catholics I knew were black. Uh,
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly right. It's
and
okay.
and
It's
the
still
Roman
good.
Catholic Church didn't even start in Europe.
Well,
Well, I mean, some people, with the Rome, Italy. Duh. No, but I get that. But where that comes from is Saint Peter moving his see from Antioch to Rome and
mm-hmm,
becoming the bishop of Rome, which is where the position he was when he died.
mm-hmm. I was one thing I was gonna say, kind of throw out there too. He's talking about basically what it's saying is it's okay. It's sort of a Marxist theology, Marxist thinking,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's okay if you're the proletariat to discriminate and attack and do whatever you can to the bourgeoisie because they're oppressing you and you're the victim. And so what they'll say in this context is that because you're part of the majority, it's okay to attack the majority. Even if it doesn't even matter if the majority is the majority or not, they just need to say, well, you're overrepresented or you're this and that. And because there's so many of you, we're okay. Like, oh, this is predominantly a Jewish organization. Well, the Jews are overrepresented, so it's okay for us to discriminate against. It's like, no, it's not. Discrimination is wrong. Period.
And brings up an interesting point I thought of. Wow, pride much, Mike? Uh, um, I was thinking about, something Ben Shapiro often says, socialism is the government pointing a gun at uh, XYZ. Well, I would play that a little differently. Socialism isn't a body pointing a gun, socialism is the gun, which is what they're sort of doing here. So, and just to use some historical examples, uh, you had the Soviets who, okay, so I have this gun of socialism. Let me level the playing field by by literally leveling, the Ukrainians, the Orthodox, anybody who did not worship Comrade Lenin or for a time Comrade Stalin,
Mm-hmm.
who dares have a god before great Comrade Stalin,
Mm-hmm.
giving him a level playing field. And the same thing we saw in National Socialist Germany. Socialism was just the gun that he used to point at the Jews, the gypsies, political opponents, Catholics. And yes, there are some film reels out there where, you have a priest saying mass and there's swastika banners. Need I remind you, that comes from the Reich Office of Propaganda and Public Enlightenment.
Which line was?
This film where, you have a priest saying mass in the presence of swastika banners.
That's it. So it's almost saying in that piece of propaganda that
exactly that's propaganda. Duh.
Yeah.
Anything that comes out of the Reich office or the Reich Ministry for what is literally called the Reich Ministry of Propaganda and Public Enlightenment, yeah, take that with a huge grain of salt.
It's kind of funny too how there's this attitude of people aren't saying it outright, but there's the implication that Catholicism and Nazism go hand in hand, which is a slander.
That is a thing I hear all the time, and
you're basically a Nazi. Yeah, that's just like.
I mean, I've been told at work, I'm a traditionalist Catholic, therefore I'm about as close to fascist as you can be without being a fascist.
Random question, Mike: was it a man or a woman that said that to you?
It was actually a man.
And let's see.
He more or less said it in jest. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, he said it in jest. That's different. I was
this is
psychoanalyze this.
Also sort of a fun little anecdote from work. I was just minding my own business. I was on my break. I go back to my post, and this guy goes to, we don't want your kind around here, and by your kind I mean Catholics. I just cool as a cucumber, looked him right in the face, and I go, in that case, my son, up yours.
And then I would be there to be like, but I'm not a droid. I'm a good boy. I'm a real boy. But it's funny later in the article too. She mentions how. What was the point? It was something to the effect. She mentions that. I lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it. Wow.
You actually had the derailment of the train of thought this time. That's a new one.
Yeah, you can take that.
And unfortunately, I can't make any bingo references.
Sad face. But she mentioned one of the things she was mentioning was that, because we're kind of talking about it being stigmatized, and it being both stigmatized, not only talking about religion, but just being associated. Oh, so it's guilt by association is kind of the point she was making.
Exactly.
So she was mentioning how when you say I'm a Catholic, what people will say is they're going to automatically describe beliefs to you, saying, oh, because you are part of this group, that means you believe everything that group believes. And that just shows you how, not only how
well, I do ascribe to all the teachings of the Catholic Church.
Well, what I mean is that what they do is say this group, there's an umbrella group because in a Marxist worldview, it's the group identity. You don't have an identity,
which may or may not be true.
Right, but they say it's like, okay, so what we've done is that we've created a label and a group and a section for you to sit in, and that means everyone in that section is the same thing. They don't think as individuals; they think as identities like this of overarching identities that just consume the whole group as a whole, as like a blob, like you're part of this blob.
And unfortunately, a majority of U.S. Catholic bishops actually buy that crap.
Of course they do, because they don't recognize it as a poison. But my point was
that they're spineless.
Of course, that's now you're really starting to think about it. But we should talk about moral decay here in a second. But my point that I was trying to make is that they just say, "Oh, I'm going to put you." It's like they stop thinking about what you're saying. They just think, "How can I fit you into a?" I need to fit you in there. So basically, if you say I'm a Catholic, it's like, oh, that means you support child molestation and you support Nazis and you support all kinds of evil things. And when it's like, well, I don't support this, like, well, it doesn't matter because you're part of group and group is this, so therefore this. So I don't even like. It's a way of patting yourself on the back for being so clever and so smart without actually having to engage with a person in front of you.
And it's not particularly clever or smart. We've been getting it
No,
for a while.
no, not
And
at
with
all.
Hitler's Pope, which is absolute trash.
That was Soviet propaganda. Have I mentioned
Yes,
that
it
before?
was. No, you haven't, but it is. It is Soviet
Yeah.
propaganda. And
Yeah, they made that up. Whole thing up.
which is funny. Yeah, we're talking about the same Pope who was lauded by the Jewish press for up to 20 years.
He criticized. The problem is that when the Soviets won the war, um, they didn't like it that you had a Catholic bishop or a Catholic Pope, my mistake, who was
technically he is the Bishop of Rome.
They didn't like it that he was being critical of the regime as much as he was being critical of the Nazis. So they said, well, let's just character assassinate him, even though he harbored Jews and other.
And he did speak out against the Nazis.
He did.
Yeah,
he did.
And so did his predecessor, Pius the Ninth. Pius the Ninth. Wow, no, it wasn't Pius the Ninth. It was Pius the 11th.
He had Jews stay in his own personal quarters.
Mm-hmm.
He hid them there.
But actually, interesting factoid. From what I remember, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I remember correctly, the Roman Catholic Church is responsible for getting more Jews out of Europe, out of the hands of the Nazis, than all of the European resistance groups combined.
Well, isn't that an interesting fact you never hear about?
I think the number was upwards of 300,000.
Holy smokes. That's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, too, with the Soviets, once they realized that they couldn't really discredit this Pope's image, they went on to attacking the cardinals underneath him, and they were much more successful in discrediting them because everyone knew the Pope's his reputation, but they didn't know the cardinals' reputation.
And there were some bad apples. We've had this conversation before.
Mm-hmm. But what the author would say of this particular piece is that, because you're Catholic, you support every bad apple and everything the Catholic Church has ever done. Which is like, that is so asinine.
Yes, and there are reasons why such people don't have the title of blessed or saint, or even servant of God, for that matter.
It's kind of funny, too, is that by the same logic, what you're also saying is that, because I kind of notice a tendency with leftists, they say, well, not all Muslims are terrorists. They say that all the time. Well, in this intersectionalist view, well, they are. In that intersectionalist view, you're saying, I'm a Muslim. That means I support everything that any Muslim has ever done ever. But the same standard isn't applied because Muslims are the proletariat groups.
Yeah, they're not part of the culture of white supremacy, so that doesn't count.
Right. Let's lump the Roman Empire and the Greeks and everything about Western civilization. It's white supremacy, and they really think that if you have a particular body, like you go to a church in the middle of like rural America and it's predominantly Anglo-descended people, you're like, oh, it's white supremacist.
Oh, forgot to mute my mic there.
Because but they frame it like it's supremacist because it's like it's the existing culture, and that's what the existing culture believes. Oh, because it's literally not a diversity office, it's evil.
Exactly. And now they're going to replace these chaplaincies on this campus with, what was it? It was with wellness education aimed at stress management, substance abuse, and sexual safety.
Under the umbrella of statism.
Exactly, because you control people, you get people to abuse their lower faculties, shall we say? You'd be surprised at what sort of power you can wield over them.
Well, it's almost like what could happen very quickly with this kind of framework is that it starts out that way, but it's really what they're saying is it's vice management. But what it really is saying, we're going to tell you what's moral with regards to your sexuality and the substances you decide to ingest and the spiritual practices. Like, just pat yourself on the back and tell you how much of a good person you are, even though
not
you're
even
conscious.
spirituality. We're nixing spirituality in general now.
There is one spirituality, and it all teaches the same thing.
And that's the state. Anyway,
the state is God.
Exactly. And I did have a train of thought, and I
completely
lost it.
You'll remember it very quickly. But my that's the whole point. Or they say, like, it doesn't matter that you're not listening to your conscience, which, I get it. Most people don't know how to listen, but it's like, no, we're going to teach you how not to listen to your conscience, how not to listen to that inner compass that's telling you what's healthy for your life. And you're stressing yourself out. Well, we're going to basically, in effect, say we're just going to teach you how to manage that stress, how you can just unstress from the strain that your system's causing because you're doing something immoral to yourself. Something to the effect of that.
Yeah, some wise man once said, the best definition for sophistication is, finding ever more clever ways of talking yourself into doing what you shouldn't be doing.
That's very well put. It's funny. This is unrelated, but it reminds me of this time where they had there was this particular grove that used to meet and probably still does meet. It's a super, super high end secret club of like the really high end elites in the world. And I don't remember, and I didn't believe the story when I first heard it, so I had to watch the video of it. Alex Jones.
I think I know the Bilderberg group or something like that.
Yeah, the Bilderberg group. When I heard about the story, I'm like, "There's no way this is true." And then I watched the video. Alex Jones has it on a band.video when he was an investigative journalist back then, and he actually infiltrated this group. And they filmed a segment of this ritual sacrifice they did where I don't know if someone is actually sacrificing it or not, but basically they did this whole ceremony with speakers and fireworks and flames and stuff, where basically like this dark, deep, demanding voice, it was basically like the voice of the devil, but what it really was the, it's like talking, it was sort of, it was effectively this domineering voice was playing over speakers, condemning this, man who was part of this religious ritual group and saying how horrible of a person he was. And the guy did this ritual and they basically fended off this voice. And then they sacrificed this, they stabbed this thing that looked like a person wrapped in bandages and they lit him on fire. And this guy screamed.
Oh, this is the Wicker Man.
Yes, I think so.
Because that actually comes from Wicca, like earlier versions of Wicca.
That's interesting. I vaguely remember this. Look up the video on the video itself, band.video, where they go into this in more detail. But basically what had happened is that Alex Jones broke it down. It's like, okay, so you watch this ritual ceremony, you get chills, you don't know what they're talking about. Here's what the whole point of it meant. What they're saying in their old English is that this ritual is conducted so that we rid ourselves of the criticism of our own conscience. So you can do whatever you want without feeling bad about it. And
that's Wicca.
Yeah. And that's what this the direction of this college
campus. Or actually, no. It's not Wicca. It's I believe the system's actually called modern witchcraft. I the name of the man who came up with it is on the tip of my brain.
If anybody knows more about what this belief system might be or what it specifically is, let me know. If I'm getting anything wrong or I'm missaying anything, feel free to text me and correct me if you happen to know any kind of correction. But this is kind of just our basic understanding of it because we're both not experts on this. So feel free to correct us and please.
Yeah, we're just two ordinary guys sharing our opinion.
Right. But it's just kind of it's interesting stuff. If anyone's an expert, we'd love to have you on the show, kind of correct us, like I said. But anyway, it's interesting stuff, and it's kind of in the same hemisphere of what she's talking about, the direction the college campus is going on. Like, get rid of organized religion and replace it with this nameless state religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this new culture of anti-racism, which I swear is one of the devil's best disguises.
Of course, you dress it up. What was the line Gandalf said in Return of the King? He said that evil isn't destroyed, It's never truly destroyed. It's broken down, and then it transforms, and it comes back a next generation in a different form.
Yeah, that's about right. And yeah, that's about right. J.R.R. Tolkien is actually one of the best known Catholic authors in the 20th century.
Apparently, people didn't really like his the Nobel Committee didn't like him at all.
No, because he actually described the Lord of the Rings as a profoundly Catholic work.
But they
I
didn't like
mean,
that at
that's the
all.
whole point of the characters. The whole point of the characters of Frodo, Gandalf, and Aragon are the threefold mission of
Aragorn.
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 Sorry, did I
Aragon's a
say?
different thing.
Yeah, I do
Christopher
that all the time.
Paolini. That's okay. You do
Anyway.
it sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah, but so Aragorn. Yeah, these three characters represent the threefold mission of Christ, that of priest, prophet, and king.
Wait, which one was priest then?
Frodo.
And who's prophet?
Gandalf.
And then, oh, cool.
I was like, and please tell me you at least get who the king is. Literally, the third book is centered around this character. Well, okay, not centered. The ending of that book is centered around this character, this king being restored to his throne.
Is it Saruman?
Oh, for heaven's sake!
Oh wait, I got it. Samwise Gamgee. Is it that one orc that had half of his face mauled?
JJ!
I
can't even yell.
JJ! Raf's like, hello. Who's yelling? Oh, okay. No, of course it's Aragorn.
Of course.
Is it Gimli? Gimli's
that would be hilarious.
That would be funny. It's like actually like the Steward of Gondor gets up at, like he's burned to a crisp. He gets up. Actually, sorry, Aragorn, my mistake. It's actually Gimli who's the heir. He's like, well, it's about time.
Yeah. Although, truth be told, in the movies,
then
Gimli's
Arwen
always
literally
been my
just,
favorite character.
Then Arwen's literally like, she literally drops Aragorn. It's like, well, if you're not king, I'd have nothing to do with you. Aragorn's like, what? It's like,
well,
I want some of that. She's like, I want some of Gimli's. Gimli's like, ha, 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 ha. No elves in my kingdom except Legolas. That's a plot twist for the ages. But no,
yes, and right now J.R.R. Tolkien is rolling in his grave.
I bet he'd be like, oh, it's funny. I should have did that. Did a spoof of his own literature. That'd be funny.
Well,
but no, jokes. But
this
jokes
is the
aside,
guy who, at a Novus Ordo Mass would say the responses in Latin. I don't think he would have done that with his own work.
And then he just says "Ve Victus" and leaves.
Yeah, but but we often joke, how movies are allowed one F-bomb to keep their PG-13 rating. And the best place to put that in the Lord of the Rings movie. And you have my bow and my axe.
You should have done that. But anyway, yeah, no, it's getting back to the article, of course, like it's I think it's interesting that this artist who is, or not this artist, the writer just mentioned how it's you have this appearance of tolerance.
Yep.
And then now the successor ideology, the thing that's coming to replace it, is coming to burn everything else to the ground and just only have that ideology. And that's what communism does. It burns everything else to the ground once it's in power.
Which is funny because this is the very same concept that even Pope Francis condemns in Fratelli Tutti. And I will bring that up sometime. I only thought of that now, but I will look it up.
Wasn't Dustin Hoffman in that movie? Oh, no, it's Tootsie. Never mind. That's the wrong movie.
Hi. Anyway, we are running low on time here. So that was a great discussion. Now, I'm not going to throw in a Muppets reference. I'm already on a short fuse.
Did someone say kaboom?
No, somebody ordered a short fuse? It'll be funnier in the edit. But anyway.
Put that in there anyways.
Anyway. So, Mr. Benks, your book quote, please.
I got one from Nietzsche, actually, today. I heard this.
Nietzsche?
Yeah.
God is dead, Nietzsche?
Yeah. Guy with
Okay.
a really gigantic mustache and very angry, psychotic eyes if you look at a photo of him. But
do you realize how little that narrows it down?
Just give it the slightest idea how little it narrows it down. So he says, quote, everything the state says is a lie, and everything it has stolen.
Well, taken out of context, it certainly is a good point.
Eventually, one of these days, I'll get around to reading Nietzsche, and I'll just, because I know he was relentlessly critical of Christianity, but he also had some very brilliant things to say on what would happen to the world philosophically in the next couple centuries.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the flavor of the day is, Machiavelli reincarnated in the flesh. Kamala Harris. I'm terrible at a cough cover.
I'm pretty sure Machiavelli didn't have this incessant urge to cackle at everything. It's like she seriously cackles like a supervillain, like orphans, children.
I'd just say, Kamala, here's a melatonin.
A barbiturates, anyone. Well, that's all I got, Mike.
And that's all I got. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you for bearing with me with my sniffles and my cold and my whatnot. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content. So thank you so much, people. Pax et bonum. Hey folks, if you like our podcast, be sure to check us out on Facebook and also check us out on our podcast platforms, namely Anchor, Spotify, Google Cast, and others you can also find on Anchor. God bless.